Welcome back to the deep dive. We're looking at something today that honestly kept me up a little bit last night. It's one of those medical realities that you just assume we've solved by now, but we actually haven't.
Yeah, it is surprising. I mean, we're talking about a condition that sends hundreds of thousands of people to the ER every single year.
Right.
And yet the treatment protocol is basically from the dark ages.
We are talking about acute pancreatitis.
Yeah.
And I want to set the scene for you here because the sources we pulled from, they were pretty graphic. Imagine the worst stomach pain of your life.
Oh, absolutely.
Like a hot poker going right through your abdomen into your back. You rush to the hospital, they run some tests, and they basically tell you your pancreas is effectively dissolving itself.
Yeah.
And then you ask, okay, doc, what's the medicine? What do I take?
And the doctor has to look at you and say, well, there isn't one.
That is the part that blows my mind. In 2024, the standard of care is just fluids and pain management.
Right. Essentially just, we'll keep you hydrated while your body fights a war.
Exactly. There is no pill, no injection, nothing that actually stops the biological process of the disease.
It's currently the most common gastrointestinal reason for hospitalization in the U.S.
Yeah.
And yet for decades, every drug trial has failed. It's practically a graveyard for pharmaceutical companies.
Until now. Or, well, maybe. That's what we're digging into today. We have a stack of documents on a phase 2b clinical trial for a completely new drug called Zegocractin.
Right.
Now, here is the twist, and honestly, the whole reason we're doing this deep dive. If you read the headline on this trial, it literally says, failed to meet primary endpoint.
Which usually in this industry means game over.
Right, and it's a massive smuttia, but the experts are looking at this quote-unquote failed trial, and they are incredibly excited. They actually think they found the map to a cure.
Yeah, they do.
So our job today, our mission, is to play detective. We need to figure out how a trial can fail on paper but succeed in reality, and what that means for the future of emergency medicine.
I love this case because it forces us to stop looking at just the summary and actually look at the underlying biology.
So let's start right there with the biology, acute pancreatitis. You mentioned the pancreas is dissolving itself. How does that even happen? Because I thought the pancreas was just supposed to help us digest food.
It is, yeah.
Okay.
Think of the pancreas as a high security factory. Its main job is to build these incredibly potent enzymes that break down steak, fat, carbohydrates.
Okay.
Normally, those enzymes are shipped out of the factory in inactive boxes.
Mm-hmm.
They don't actually open up and start working until they hit the intestines.
So they're packaged safely.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But in acute pancreatitis, something goes fundamentally wrong. The shipping system breaks down. Those enzymes get activated inside the factory.
Oh, wow. So the workers basically start tearing down the walls.
Right. The factory explodes from the inside out. And that causes massive, massive inflammation. And this is where our drug, Zegocractin, comes in. It targets the specific switch that sets off that whole explosion.
The source material calls this drug hold on, let me check my notes, a calcium release activated calcium channel inhibitor.
It is quite a mouthful.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it really is. But why are we talking about calcium? I always thought calcium was just for strong bones.
It is, but in the microscopic world of a single cell, calcium is actually a signal. It's like a text message telling the cell to do something.
Oh, interesting.
In the pancreas, the toxicity starts when these little gates on the cell surface, they're called CRAC channels, they basically get stuck open.
CRAC channels. Okay, got it.
So calcium just floods into the cell.
Mm-hmm.
And that toxic overload of calcium is the exact trigger that tells the enzymes, wake up and start digesting. It fuels the inflammation.
So if the calcium is the fuel for the fire, Zegocractin is what, the shutoff valve?
Precisely. It physically blocks those channels. It stops the calcium flood.
Huh.
The working theory is if you cut the fuel, you stop the factory from burning down and you save the organ.
And they had really good reason to think this would actually work. Earlier phase 1 trials showed it helped people eat sooner.
Yeah, they did.
So they launched this phase 2b trial. And this wasn't a small study either.
No, this was the gold standard. A double-blind, randomized, placebo-controlled trial. They ran it in 37 different centers across the U.S. and India. They recruited 216 adults.
Wow.
And this is key, they didn't just take anyone with some stomach pain. They specifically took people with acute pancreatitis plus SIRS.
Right, SIRS, S-I-R-S, systemic inflammatory response syndrome, which just sounds aggressive.
It is aggressive. It means the fire isn't just in the pancreas anymore. The smoke has spread to the whole house. Your heart rate is up. Your white blood cell count is spiking. You're breathing fast. The whole body is sounding the alarm.
So these are really sick people.
Very sick. These are the patients at serious risk of major organ failure.
Okay, so we have 216 of these incredibly sick patients. They split them into 4 groups. One group gets the placebo, just saline, basically. The other groups get the drug at different strength, low dose, medium dose, and high dose.
Yes.
And the treatment period is actually really short, right?
Very short. It's a once-a-day 5E infusion for just 3 days.
Was 3 days.
Right. The whole idea is to hit the inflammation hard and fast, right at the very beginning of the cascade.
So they run the trial, they gather all this data, and they look at the primary endpoint. This is the finish line they set for themselves to formally prove the drug works. And the metric they chose was time to solid food tolerance.
Essentially, just how fast can you eat a real meal without vomiting or having severe pain?
Is that really the best way to measure if a life-saving drug is working? Can you eat toast?
It sounds a bit trivial, doesn't it?
It does.
But historically, in pancreatitis, the gut shuts down completely. When a patient asks for food and can actually keep it down, it's the universal clinical sign that the inflammation is subsiding and the gut is waking back up. The FDA fully accepts it as a standard measure of recovery.
Okay, that makes sense. So it's a reliable proxy for getting better. Let's look at the actual results then, because this is the moment of truth. The patients who got the placebo took a median of 66 hours to eat solid food.
66 hours. That's our baseline.
Now, the patients who got the high dose of Zegocractin, the absolute strongest medicine, they took 67 hours.
1 hour longer.
That is devastating, right? If I'm the CEO of this biotech company, I am sweating. The drug didn't just fail to beat the placebo, it was practically identical.
Yeah, statistically, it's a total wash. The p-value was non-significant. If you just look at the whole population of the trial, the drug did absolutely nothing to speed up eating.
So why are we here? Why didn't they just bin the drug and move on to the next thing?
Because of a problem called dilution. And this is exactly where the detective work starts. Acute pancreatitis is tricky. A lot of people, even ones presenting with SIRS, will just get better in 2 or 3 days on their own, simply with IV fluids. We call them rapid recoverers.
So they would have eaten that toast in 66 hours, regardless of whether you gave them the cutting-edge drug or a sugar pill.
Exactly. And if you have too many of those rapid recoverers in your trial, they create so much noise that you literally cannot see the signal. They dilute the data.
Right.
The drug might be working miracles on the really sick people, but the average gets pulled down by the people who didn't even need the drug in the first place.
It's like testing a revolutionary cast for broken legs, but half the people in the study just have a bruised shin. The cast doesn't make the bruise heal faster, so you look at the data and conclude, well, casts don't work.
That is a perfect analogy. So the researchers stepped back and said, okay, the primary endpoint failed, but let's look at the subgroups. Let's look at the people who actually had broken legs, the sickest patients.
And this is where the whole story flips. They looked at 2 different ways to define sickest. The first one was high hematocrit. Now, I know hematocrit has to do with blood counts, but why is it a bad sign here?
Hematocrit basically measures the percentage of your blood that is red blood cells versus plasma, the liquid part. When you have severe pancreatitis, your blood vessels get leaky because of all the inflammation. The fluid leaks out of your veins and into your surrounding tissues.
So your blood essentially gets thicker.
It turns into sludge. We literally call it hemoconcentration. If your hematocrit is high, it means you are profoundly dehydrated inside your veins and your whole body is in major distress.
Okay, so they isolated the people with this sludge blood, which was about 92 patients. Let's look at their data specifically.
Right. So in the placebo group, the really sick patients who got no drug, it took them a median of 113.5 hours to eat.
Ooh, 113 hours. That's almost 5 whole days. Compare that to the 66 hours in the general group. These people were clearly in a much worse state.
They absolutely were. Now look at the sick patients who got the high dose of Zegocractin.
They took 67 hours.
Do you see that?
That is massive. That's almost a 50% reduction. We went from nearly 5 days of agony down to less than 3.
Precisely. When you strip away the people who are going to get better anyway, and you just look at the people whose biology was actually fighting that war, the drug cut the sickness time nearly in half.
That's incredible. And just to be absolutely sure, they checked this against another measure, right? The Balthazar score, which honestly sounds like a villain from a fantasy novel, the Balthazar score.
It does sound a bit dramatic. It's actually a clinical grading system based on CT scans.
Oh, okay.
If you have a Balthazar score of D or E, it means the scan looks really ugly. There's fluid collecting around the pancreas. There's significant inflammation. It's a visual, undeniable confirmation of severity.
And the numbers for that group.
almost identical to the blood work group. Placebo patients with bad scans took 112 hours to eat. High-dose patients took 66 hours.
So we have two completely different ways of identifying the true target patient blood work and CT scans, and both show the exact same thing. The drug absolutely works if you give it to the right people.
Correct. But here is the really important thing. As a doctor, helping someone eat 2 days sooner is great. I obviously want that for my patients. But that's not why I'm excited about this drug.
You're excited about the secondary outcomes.
Yes. Because people don't die from not eating toast for a few days. They die from systemic organ failure. And this is where the trial data goes from interesting to a potential breakthrough.
Let's talk about respiratory failure then, because this is the big one. Why does a problem in the stomach stop your lungs from working?
It goes back to that systemic inflammation we talked about. The toxic chemicals released by the dying pancreas travel right through the bloodstream to the lungs. They damage the delicate air sacs, fluid rushes in, and suddenly you simply cannot absorb oxygen. You end up on a ventilator.
And once you're on a ventilator with pancreatitis, the survival rate drops significantly, doesn't it?
Drastically. It's a terrifying complication to see.
Okay, let's look at the scoreboard for the trial. In the placebo group, how many people developed new-onset severe respiratory failure?
4 patients.
And in the low-dose group?
Also 4 patients.
And in the high-dose group? The group where the drug was actually blocking the calcium channels effectively at 2.0 milligrams per kilogram?
0.
0.
Not a single patient.
I really want to pause on that for you listening, because that's not just a cool statistic. That is potentially 4 actual people who didn't have a tube shoved down their throat. That's 4 families who didn't have to sit there and watch their loved one on life support.
It's a profoundly important finding. It suggests that if you hit the system with a high enough dose of Zegocractin, you can actually stop the cascade that shuts down the lungs. You are effectively containing the fire within the pancreas.
And speaking of the pancreas, it helped there too. The trial looked at necrotizing pancreatitis. I definitely don't need a medical degree to know necrotizing is bad news.
It essentially means dead tissue. Parts of the organ actually die off due to a lack of blood flow and those toxic enzymes running wild. Very often, surgeons have to physically go in and scrape out the dead tissue.
That sounds awful.
It's incredibly messy, it's dangerous, and it leads to severe long-term problems for the patient.
Did the drug actually stop the necrosis?
It definitely slowed it down. In the placebo group, 17 patients developed necrosis. But in the high-dose group, only 11 did. It's a very clear dose-dependent response, meaning the more drug you give, the less tissue death occurs.
You know, usually when we look at these studies on the show, we look at one variable at a time. Did they eat? Did they breathe? But the report mentions something called an exploratory win ratio. It sounds like a baseball stat.
Yeah.
What exactly is a win ratio measuring?
It actually is a bit like a wins above replacement stat in baseball. The win ratio is a modern statistical method that tries to capture the entire patient journey. Yeah. It essentially pairs a patient on the drug with a patient on placebo and asks who had the better outcome overall. And it takes into account everything: death, organ failure, length of stay.
So it's a totally holistic score.
Right. And the win ratio for the high-dose group compared to placebo was 1.64, and the p-value was 0.04, so it's statistically significant.
What's the translation for that?
Translation: the patients on the drug were significantly better off overall. Mathematically, it confirms that even though the average patient didn't eat any faster, the treated patients had much safer, healthier recoveries.
And they got out of the hospital faster, too, right?
They did. That's the bottom line for the healthcare system itself. Placebo patients were stuck in the hospital for a median of 104 hours. High-dose patients were discharged in 89 hours.
That's a difference of 15 hours.
15 hours might not sound like a massive amount of time, but in a crowded hospital, clearing a bed almost a full day early is huge.
Yeah.
And for the patient, that's one less night of hospital noise, bad food, and a major reduction in the risk of hospital-acquired infection.
So let's pull this all together. We started with a headline that basically said failure. But what we actually found in the data is a drug that, when given at a high dose to the sickest patients,
stops respiratory failure, reduces organ death, gets people home sooner.
That feels like a massive success to me. So why the negative label?
Because clinical trials are an incredibly strict game. You have to declare your exact primary endpoint before you start. They bet on food tolerance in everyone, and they lost that specific bet. But, and this is why Phase 2 exists, the loss taught them exactly how to win the next one.
It essentially gave them the map for Phase 3.
Exactly. Phase 2 is for learning. Phase 3 is for confirming. Now they know exactly how to design the final pivotal trial.
So what are the three keys to that map?
First, the dose. They know now that low and medium doses are practically useless. They have to go with the high dose, the 2.0 milligrams per kilogram.
Second, the population.
Right. Don't treat everyone who walks in the door with stomach pain. Screen them. Check for that high hematocrit or do the CT scan for a high Balthazar score. Only enroll the people who are biologically primed to actually benefit from the intervention.
And third, the goal.
Change the endpoint entirely. Don't make it about eating burgers. Make the primary goal prevention of severe respiratory failure or a composite of major organ failure. That is clearly where the drug shines.
If they do that, they'll likely get a positive result that the FDA can actually stamp.
And we finally get a real disease-modifying drug for acute pancreatitis.
I have to ask, though, was it safe? Did it have any nasty side effects? Because if it saves your lungs but completely destroys your liver, we have a whole different problem.
The safety profile was actually excellent. It was very well tolerated across the board. That's the other major green light they needed to move forward confidently.
It really is a story about resilience in science. I keep thinking about that 0 on respiratory failure. If the researchers had just looked at the primary endpoint, shrugged, and said, well, the p-value didn't hit, throw it in the trash, we would be losing a potential cure.
That is the real danger of headline medicine.
Hmm.
We live in a world that wants simple yes or no answers.
Yeah.
But biology is inherently messy. Diseases are complex. Sometimes the success isn't that you cured everyone, but that you figured out exactly who you can cure.
It reminds me of, well, imagine if you tested a parachute, but you tested it on 100 people, and 50 of them were just jumping off a curb and 50 were jumping out of a plane.
Right.
And then you look at the data and conclude, well, on average, the parachute didn't really reduce injury rates much.
Because the people jumping off the curb didn't need it. That is exactly what happened here. The rapid recoverers were jumping off a curb. They were fine. The drug is a parachute. You only see it work when you're actually falling from the sky.
That is a perfect image. So for you listening, why does all of this matter? Aside from the fact that we might finally have a real treatment for this awful disease.
I think it's a crucial lesson in how to read the news, especially health and science news. When you hear a study failed, you always have to ask, did the science actually fail? Or did the trial design just ask the wrong question to the wrong group of people?
Context really is everything.
And honestly, it gives me a lot of hope because it makes you wonder how many other quote-unquote failed drugs are out there that actually worked perfectly, but we just missed the signal in the noise.
That is a haunting thought to leave you with. How many potential life-saving treatments, cures for terrible diseases, are literally sitting in the waste bin of a pharmaceutical lab right now, simply because the trial design was too broad to catch the specific group of people who needed it most?
Probably far more than we'd ever want to admit.
Well, luckily for the pancreatitis patients out there, Zegocractin didn't get thrown out. It's moving to phase 3, and we will absolutely be watching that closely.
Absolutely. Fingers crossed for the next phase.
Thanks for diving deep with us today. It's a really good reminder that sometimes you have to dig a little deeper past the headlines to find the truth.
Always.
See you on the next one. Stay curious.